I have BPD, ADHD, and autism. I got diagnosed with BPD 16 years ago, and I have spent the last 16 years understanding and researching BPD to help others, to help myself mostly, but now to help others. And I got diagnosed with ADHD and autism about 3 years ago. BPD is borderline personality disorder. Not silly at all. There are no silly questions. Do you think BPD recovery is possible? Yes, very much so. I do like the word recovery more than I like the word cure, because there is no cure for BPD. My brain's so mush. Because there is no, or BPD is not one thing. BPD is not a disease. BPD is not a sickness. You're not sick. You're not broken. Your brain is working completely as designed. BPD is a behavioral condition. And because it's a behavioral condition, it means we are just doing specific behaviors that we've learnt up to this point. Moving forward, you can learn different behaviors. You can learn other behaviors. And because we can learn other behaviors, yes, you can get to a point where it is no longer considered having BPD. Will you reach a point where you never have BPD behaviors? No, because BPD behaviors are human behaviors. Everyone can have BPD behaviors. Everyone can respond in a BPD way depending on their environment. Since finding out I have EUPD, which EUPD is another word for BPD. EUPD is emotional unstable personality disorder, and BPD is borderline personality disorder. Since finding out I have EUPD, I feel so much better. I'm learning to stop and think. 100%. So that's the whole point of learning to manage BPD. The way that we manage BPD is a therapy called dialectic behavioral therapy. And dialectic behavioral therapy is where we learn to create distance and space between an event and our response. My psychologist says that BPD is the easiest personality or disorder to treat and go away. I think it is just the one that it has the most knowledge currently. All personality disorders, or at least the cluster B personality disorders, are all treated with dialectic behavioral therapy. Hey B, how do I get over having a favorite person? Thank you for your question. The very first step that we need to take is stop calling them your favorite person. Okay, we need to remove the labeling, because the more that we call them our favorite person, the more we put them on a pedestal. Okay, we place them on this pedestal that is very, it is detrimental to both you and them. So then we need to understand what a favorite person is. Why do we have these favorite people? When we talk about favorite person, it's not so much, we don't use that term in clinical terms. We use idealization and devaluation. And why do we have these attachments, these relationships where do we idealize someone and we devalue someone? When we have a disconnected sense of self, when we don't have a good sense of self, when we don't have a relationship with ourselves, we give that power over to another person. We essentially say to another person, I don't trust my reality. I don't believe my thoughts and feelings and behaviors. I trust yours. I think you're better than me. I think you know more than me. So I'm going to put you on this pedestal, and I'm going to do whatever you say or whatever you think or whatever you validate. The problem with that is it's just a human being. We're putting another human on a pedestal. And when we do that, when they eventually hurt us, because all humans have the capability to harm, when they eventually disappoint us or hurt us or whatever, we take that very personally. So that the higher up we put them on this pedestal, the more personal we take their flaws, the more personal we take their shortcomings. Because I've put you on this pedestal, you're this perfect person to me. If you are not perfect, that means I'm even worse than I thought. That means I'm even less than I thought. So the very first step, stop calling people your favorite people or favorite person. The next step, we have to build a stronger sense of self. We have to build a stronger relationship with ourselves. How is idealization different from limerence? Idealization is what you do when you are in limerence. When you don't fully see the person as a human being, you are in limerence. So if you see a person as complete and full and amazing without any flaws, that's impossible. You're looking at another human. And so if that is the case, that is what we refer to as being in limerence. I studied psychology, and ever since my professors found out about my BPD, they treat me differently. Yes, so when I was studying psychology, probably one of the worst things was hearing my peers talk about BPD. So they didn't know I had BPD, and the way they were discussing it was really disheartening. And these are the current psychologists now. I think I might have traits of BPD. What should I do? If you feel like you are relating to a lot of BPD content, if you feel like you're being seen for the first time, the thing that you can do is look into dialectic behavioral therapy, DBT. Dialectic behavioral therapy is the therapy that we use to manage BPD, borderline personality disorder. All of DBT, so DBT, dialectic behavioral therapy, is a skills-based therapy. All of the DBT skills can be found online. So if you do not have the luxury of seeing a therapist, if you do not have the luxury of living in a country where they care about mental health, you can start doing DBT by yourself. You can find all of the DBT skills on the internet. If you type in DBT workbook PDF, you will find a workbook that we use in therapy. It has a green cover. Please don't download a virus. I think it's the second or third, maybe the first, second, or third link, depending on your country. It has about 246 pages. Someone uploaded the whole workbook that we use to the internet. However, you can find all of the skills. If you type in DBT skills, you can go to Google Images, and there will be people who've done worksheets about the DBT skills. Are you diagnosed? Yes. So these are my diagnoses. We need more places where lived experience is seen as a plus, not a negative. I called a friend for help in an episode for the first time. That's huge. That's huge, that's huge, that's huge. I love that. Proud of you. Very often we create these delusions because of a lack of control. Our brain enjoys control. Our brain likes control. So many of our behaviors, so many of our abusive behaviors, painful behaviors, self-destructive behaviors comes from a lack of control. And the only thing we can control is how we see ourselves. The only thing we can control is how we experience the world, how we interact with the world. Everything else is unfortunately out of our control. One of my friends have BPD. How can I help her? How can I help myself understanding her and her behavior? You can ask her. You can have a chat with her. You can ask how her BPD affects her, how she sees the world, how she responds to the world. Because BPD is not a thing. It is not a one thing. It is not a disease. It is a collection of behaviors, and there is 256 different ways to experience BPD. I had to ask for assurance that they don't hate me for a couple of times from my friend after. That's fair. We have to remember, when we change our behaviors, when we change our coping mechanisms from isolation to reaching out, when we change our coping mechanisms from hurting ourselves to improving ourselves, it doesn't feel good at the start. It doesn't feel nice to enforce boundaries. It doesn't feel good to tell people no, because we're so used to the other way. We're so used to isolating. We're so used to hurting ourselves. We're so used to, just pushing ourselves to the brink to impress other people, to comfort other people. So when we start putting ourselves first, when we start doing healthy things, it doesn't necessarily start by feeling good. The feeling good comes when we start integrating it. The feeling good comes when we start realizing, oh, when I don't isolate myself, I now have new connections. I'm able to be vulnerable with a person, and they get to be vulnerable with me, and I create a new friendship, a stronger friendship. When I say no to people, I build a connection with self. I validate myself. I tell myself, hey, I see you. You don't have to do these things to impress other people. But at the start, it doesn't necessarily feel good. Do fearful, avoidant, disorganized have a connection to BPD? Yes, BPD, people with borderline personality disorder, usually have what we refer to as disorganized attachment. It is both the need for intimacy, it's the need for closeness, but the fear of closeness, the fear of people hurting you. So it's this constant kind of push-pull of, I want to be close to people, but I am scared to be close to people, which can be referred to as disorganized attachment. How old were you when you realized? I was in and out of psychology offices since I was 6 years old. I got diagnosed, I don't quite remember, I think it was probably 2021 in the psych ward. So I was in and out of psych wards for months at a time, and I got diagnosed with BPD in the psych ward. I was diagnosed with BPD, but recently CPTSD. It makes more sense for my symptoms. Very fair, Jennifer. Psychology is still very new. Psychology is so new. And we don't know what we don't know. So the more we learn, and as bad as social media has been for our mental health, it has opened up this world where we have so many more participants to a world study of psychology, a world study of understanding. Because before, when we were isolated, we weren't so interconnected, we could only really study in very small kind of groups, because the people who had the education, the people who had the knowledge, the people who had the power were the ones conducting studies, were the ones deciding on outcomes. And now we have more people getting education. We have a wider variety of people. We have women, we have people of color, we have disabilities coming into play or understanding that we didn't have before. So the more we move forward, the more we are interconnected, the more we share our stories, the more people with lived experience come into the psychology world, come into the scientific world, the more answers we'll start to get. The US doesn't formally recognize CPTSD. That's exactly 100%. That is why psychology is so frustrating as a whole. Most of what we learn, if not everything that we've learned up to this point, comes from a very specific group of people. Rich white men. Rich white men decided on what mental illness is and then wrote a book about it. And we have only revised that book or looked back into that book 6 times. The more we put things together, the more we share our stories, the more we learn. I had fun with police in episodes and was choked how they handled it so wrong, made it worse. But yes, that is why we're trying to move away from institutionalized mental health, because involuntary incarceration is so antithetical to mental health. Police should not have anything to do with mental health. In fact, there should be mental health providers in the police force when we go and look up people in crisis. Women have different symptoms and presentations than men in a lot of endeavors. That is only because of socialization. That is also the fault of rich white men, because biologically, there's no difference in how BPD presents in men and women. It is socially. So because men are seen as more aggressive, men are seen as more outwardly, they will be treated for aggression, they will be treated for substance abuse, they will not be treated for BPD as a whole. Because women are seen as emotional and men are not emotional, apparently, as if humans are not just emotions. Women are more likely to be treated for BPD as a whole instead of the individual traits. Okay, I had run-ins with police in episodes, was shocked how they handled BPD wrong. This is why we call for, defunding police or, not putting police in so much power. It's not that we don't want a police force or we don't want law and order. It is that we want police to be more educated. Police have so much money and resources and they just handle everything badly. The amount of times, even in Australia, that we are too scared to call the mental health team because they bring police. And when you are in an episode, when you are in crisis, you don't need police. You need someone to listen to you. How does it feel to be in an episode? That can mean so many different things for so many different people, Dodo. Like I said, there are 256 different ways to experience BPD. When we talk about having an episode, what we are referring to is you have your fight or flight is triggered. Your amygdala is triggered. Okay, the word triggered has been watered down by social media, but the word triggered, what it means is your brain has gone into fight or flight. So something that has happened in your environment has triggered your brain to think that you are in danger. Okay, so if your brain thinks that you are in danger, it will activate your behavioral brain. So it will deactivate your thinking brain. Your prefrontal cortex shuts down. Your amygdala starts being in control. And what that is, it then uses whatever coping mechanism you have decided is helpful over your life, and it will start doing that coping mechanism. Whether that coping mechanism is screaming at people, hurting yourself or others, isolation, overeating, exercise, running, screaming, hyperventilating, whatever it is that your brain has decided is safer than the current environment, it will start doing that thing. So how does an episode feel? It can feel like being out of control. It can feel like you want to rip your skin off. It can feel overwhelming. It can feel like you want to hyperventilate. It can feel like you want to run away. It really depends what your behavioral pattern is. If you guys are new here, I have BPD. I've spent the last 16 years researching and understanding BPD to help myself, first of all, and now I help other people with their BPD. How dare my ADHD disable me? How dare my disability cause me a disability? That's why when we are dealing with ADHD and autism, the number one thing that you have to learn is that you have ADHD or autism. There is no magic tablet. There is no magic spell that is going to take away your traits, take away the way your brain works. The number one thing that we have to do is come to terms with the fact that your brain works differently. And once we get to that point, you can start incorporating ways to help yourself. My son hits his head over and over. Such a common fear response is by hitting yourself in some way. It both acts as a fear response and also a self-soothing behavior. Okay, so our bodies have inherently ways that we self-soothe. Our body knows how to calm ourselves down. But because we are so disconnected from our bodies, we don't do the things to calm ourselves down. So our body kind of malfunctions and will hit you because that is how you calm down. You have to jump, you have to move, you have to shake your body to release the cortisol, to release the adrenaline. So that is why at least in BPD and a lot of ADHD and a lot of autism, it is about harm reduction, not harm prevention. Okay, it's not always possible for us not to hit ourselves in the head. It's not always possible for us not to hurt ourselves in some way, but we want to minimize that hurt, not necessarily completely prevent it. I want to know how to help him to stop. What you can do is we can start looking at emotional regulation. Okay, so instead of trying to go from doing nothing and then trying to stop him from doing his self-soothing, we need to try find other things that you can incorporate to help him self-soothe. So maybe even try not reach the point of where he feels the need to hit himself. Okay, again, can't always stop that specific behavior, but we can lessen what gets him to that behavior. We can incorporate self-soothing up to that point before he gets to that behavior. So 100% would look into emotional regulation skills that you might be able to help him with. What does it take to be diagnosed with BPD? There are different elements to it, but the very first one that I need to stress is you do not need an official BPD diagnosis unless that diagnosis is going to help you. Okay, this is so important. BPD is still highly stigmatized, both in life and in the mental health industry. The stigma comes from psychologists and psychiatrists, okay? So that is the very most important part. You only need an official diagnosis if that diagnosis is going to help you with insurance, if that diagnosis is going to help you get into DBT groups somehow, if that diagnosis is going to help you in whatever way. A diagnosis is not to validate your life experience. You can start managing your traits. You can start helping yourself without an official diagnosis. Okay, that is the first part. The second part is the reason for this is A, the stigma that comes from the diagnosis is still massive. B, not everyone has the luxury to live in a country or a town or a community that acknowledges BPD. Not everyone has the luxury to live in a town or a country or a city that have practitioners who know anything about BPD. Okay, so if you don't have the luxury of those two things, that doesn't mean you just have to sit at home and not do anything. You can start helping yourself. In fact, because of the stigma that comes from psychologists, that comes from psychiatrists, we have something that we refer to as self-therapy. And self-therapy is a very valid form for you to manage your traits. And self-therapy, what it includes is you researching dialectic behavioral therapy, you finding the DBT skills, you getting a DBT workbook, and then finding curiosity and interest in yourself. Okay? Trying to uncover why you do the things you do by asking yourself questions, by building a relationship with self. And the combination of those two, learning DBT, understanding the skills, and seeing how it integrates into your life because you're curious about yourself, that is what's going to help you. Ooh, DBT therapy isn't great. I had it before. This is a very important aspect to understand with DBT. So I personally had to do DBT 3 times. I had to do it 3 times because the very first time it was kind of forced on me and nothing works if it's forced on you. The second time I was still very angry at the world and everyone involved, so it really didn't stick. The third time is why it stuck with me and why I'm currently writing my own DBT book, because the thing that was missing is you. Okay, DBT is just skills. DBT is just skills. But if you don't have a vested interest in yourself, if you don't have a curiosity about yourself, the skills aren't going to do anything. It would be the same as if I liked guitar. I loved guitar. I want to teach everyone guitar. And I come up to you and you hate guitar. You hate guitar. You don't like guitar. You don't find it interesting. But I give you a guitar in your hands and I teach you 3 chords. And you can play those 3 chords. It sounds okay. There's not a lot of passion in it. There's not a lot of love. But you can play the 3 chords. And then the moment I turn my back, I leave the room, you put that guitar down and you never learn another thing. If I came back to you a week later, 2 weeks later, and I go, hey, can you play those chords? Maybe you'll remember them, maybe. Reluctantly, you'll pick up the guitar and it will sound pretty ick. And now think about it in a different way. If I gave you a guitar and you were interested in guitar, you may not have known anything about guitar, but you're interested and you want to learn about the guitar. And now I teach you 3 chords. And now you play those 3 chords. I leave, I come back in 2 weeks, those 3 chords sound better than I even taught you because you were interested in the guitar. You have to be interested in yourself. You don't have to care about yourself. You don't have to love yourself. You have to be interested though. You have to want to understand why you do the things you do. In your journey, have you been able to lessen black and white thinking? Is that something you experienced? I was the poster child for BPD. I had all 9 traits consistently forever. I very much had black and white thinking, and I still sometimes do have black and white thinking. But with DBT, what we learn is to see the gray area all the time. And that is where we get, or what comes from radical acceptance. Radical acceptance allows you to go, okay, well, it's either or. It's either going to be that or it's going to be that. Cool. What if it's not though? What if it's neither of those things? Can I be okay with if it's not either of those things? What then? What do we do then? And that's where we come from radical acceptance. I'm 26 and I don't think I've ever questioned myself like that. Exactly. 26 is still young to realize that. I have worked with people who are 40. I have friends and family members who are 50, 60, 70, 80 who have never had these conversations with themselves. Think about the amount of time and effort we spend thinking about celebrities. Think about the time and effort we spend getting to know our friends and family and partners. We know what our partners' likes and dislikes are. We know what their biggest fears are, their biggest dreams. Do you know what yours are? Have you asked yourself? Have you sat down and spoken and had a conversation with yourself to think about the things that you enjoy, the things that you like? And even more so, now we've discovered the things that we like. How often do you do those things? How often do you incorporate the things that you like? I think for a lot of us, we have this idea that sometime soon life will begin. At some point, life will start. If you are hearing this, if you are watching this, life has started. Life has begun. And so this is it. Here we are. Okay? There is not some magical future time where we will have everything figured out, where we will have millions of dollars, where we will be free of suffering. Unfortunately, and fortunately, that's never going to happen. So what can we do right now? What can I do right now, today, to make this easier on me? What can I do right now? Do you like flowers? Do you ever have flowers in your house? Do you like weird squishy toys that other people might find strange? Do you have your own? Do you like STEM toys? What do you enjoy? What do you enjoy doing? Do you like music? What type of music do you like? Do you play yourself that music? Do you incorporate things that you enjoy into your life? When we're on this self-help journey, when we're on this self-discovery journey, so often we constantly remove things. Don't smoke, don't drink, don't do this, don't watch this, don't da blah blah. And we remove things and we remove things and we remove things. And then we go, why am I still unhappy? Why am I still sad? You've removed everything. Add some things. Add some other things. All right, so if we've removed our current coping mechanisms, add new ones. We have to add joy to our lives. We can't just keep subtracting things. Do you have any tips on how to feel emotions in front of other people? The same way you would feel them alone. We have to get comfortable just being, just feeling. You're allowed to feel. You're allowed to look silly in front of other people. It's so funny that the biggest thing that we're scared of is being embarrassed. We would rather harm ourselves long term to save ourselves short-term embarrassment. Being in a situation with another person, feeling a feeling, and then vocalizing that feeling. Hey, I feel uncomfortable with this conversation. I'm going to leave. I feel sad about this. I feel upset. We're allowed to feel. We're allowed to express how we feel. We're allowed to say how we feel. I don't feel my emotions. So you said I did DBT and it didn't work. And yet you are here saying, I don't feel my emotions. I 100% encourage you to look into DBT again, because through DBT, we learn to feel our emotions. You have to learn to feel your emotion. That's the point. That's why we're here, to feel. That's all your body wants to do. It's your body's two functions is keeping itself alive and feeling. That's it. And it keeps itself alive by feeling. That's why we're here. Is it common for people with BPD to have partners? I mean, I guess. Is it common for anyone to have partners? People with BPD aren't diseased. People with BPD aren't some weird different species. Anything that you can answer, does a human, is the answer is yes for people with BPD. Hey, I'm new to this. Can you tell me a little about BPD? I'm currently researching it for uni. BPD is a behavioral condition that we have learned from childhood, and it gets developed when in your formative years, you are fundamentally invalidated. Your reality, your emotional responses, your idea of the world is invalidated by authority figures. Authority figures are your parents, your teachers, your friends who are older than you, like people that you've placed on a pedestal, your coaches, your priests, your doctors, anyone you as a child thought of as knowing, all-knowing, someone who knows more than you. So if you are as a child getting invalidated, your reality, your thoughts, your feelings are constantly being told you're too much, you shouldn't feel like that, you shouldn't cry, you shouldn't be excited about that, can you calm down, you're too excited, you're too loud. If that is consistent, you will develop a fear of your own reality. And so growing up, we don't have a connection with reality. We have our inner world, we have our inner thinking with what we think is going on, and then there is what's actually going on. And those things are very often not very linked, which is why we have in dialectic behavioral therapy a way that we create a better relationship with self and a better connection to our reality. Do you believe the word borderline in BPD should be removed or changed to EUPD? I believe that we should stop pathologizing human behavior. Jake, I don't like EUPD. I don't like borderline. Or I like borderline personality. I don't like the word disorder. I think disorder should be removed from everything. Calling autism spectrum disorder, ew, gross. EUPD though, not much better. Emotional unstable personality disorder, weird, gross. It is having an understanding that all of these things is stuff that we have learnt and stuff that we can unlearn. It is not like some physical ailment that there is a linear path to change. It is a behavioral condition that we can learn new behaviors. I love DBT, but the homework is so much, 100%. But it's one of those things. It's our brain cannot change if it doesn't have enough information. And the exercises, the homework that we do with DBT, it's just to give your brain more information. It's just to have you understand what we can change, really. Like, radical acceptance is so hard. Radical acceptance is the hardest and most important skill that you can ever learn. And you don't need BPD to learn radical acceptance. You don't need any mental health condition. I think everyone needs to learn radical acceptance. There would be so much less dumb stuff happening if we all just had a little bit of radical acceptance. So are you saying people with BPD, ADHD, and autism don't need help? I have not said that at all. I just told you that we need to work with our brains. A lot of people, specifically people with BPD and a lot of people with ADHD and autism, the stigma comes from practitioners. So the stigma around BPD comes from psychologists, it comes from psychiatrists. For a lot of people, myself included, we don't get along with practitioners. I don't work well with practitioners. So what you can do is called self-therapy. You can get help yourself. You can do the work yourself. And things like ADHD and autism, there is no help for it necessarily. The help you need to learn is to work with your brain. If you go and get an autism diagnosis, you don't leave with a pack of things that makes your life easier. There's no pill, there's no magic spell where you get a diagnosis and then you go home and then things are easier. No, you now have to go home and get to know your brain. You have to understand what things trigger you. You have to understand what things you are sensitive to that you can't have in your life. And you have to then remove those things. You are the one that has to bring awareness to that. There is no magic pill for that. And this is why it's so important for us to understand ourselves and our brains. You would not ask a plumber to paint your walls. You would not ask an electrician to fix your toilets. You need to go to a practitioner who has the skills that you need. CBT, although very helpful for a lot of people, is not helpful for people with complex mental health. So before you can't just go to any practitioner. If you have complex mental health, you have to go to a practitioner who knows what they're talking about. Not every psychologist has the history of the world behind them. Every practitioner has their set knowledge, has their set skills, and you have to find the ones that can help you. I started doing shadow work on Word with the screen dimmed so I can't read. Lots come out. Shadow work is such an important component to go with DBT. What would your advice be for someone who got diagnosed with autism as an adult? The biggest advice I have is learn to understand yourself. Okay, learn to accept yourself. Learn that the person you thought that you were supposed to be, the person who pushed themselves, the person who burnt out, the person who might have chosen hobbies and careers based on other people, learn that that's not you. And give yourself time to grieve that person, to grieve who you thought you were going to be. And then start to find out who you are, what things you are capable of, what things you can do without burning out, even if it's lesser than, even if it's not being a doctor or a lawyer or, whatever high stress careers are out there. I told our mental health champion about DBT, and she's going to summarize points to help everyone at work. I'm worried they will take the mickey out of it and discourage me. Here's an important part that we learn when we start learning about ourselves, when we start unpacking our own stuff, you are going to create enemies. People who are still stuck in their unhealthy coping mechanisms, in their unhealthy thinking patterns, when they come up against people who are putting themselves first, who are learning about themselves, who are learning about emotional regulation, when they come up against those people, they feel judged. They feel looked down on. Okay, so if you are not working on something within yourself and someone else is, that interaction can make that person feel like you are judging them. Like you are saying they are lesser than because I'm working on emotional regulation. What are you doing? That is so personalized. That is a them problem. So here's the thing. You probably will come up against people who will laugh at it. You'll probably will come up against people who'll say it's stupid. I can see it for what it is. Okay, if that person isn't in a place to accept X, Y, and Z, if that person isn't in a place to accept emotional regulation, learning, understanding, they do have to make light of it. They do have to joke about it. They do have to have, a defense against it. Because otherwise, what they will have to do is sit with their own thoughts. Otherwise, what they'll have to do is sit with their own responsibility and go, hey, maybe I should look into this. And that's really hard because you would know how hard it is. You're doing it. You're currently doing it. And they're not ready for that. So when you come up against people who mock you for things or don't take your journey seriously, that means you're doing good. It means you're on the right path. I sometimes love my black and white thinking. It feels safer. That's the point. All of our destructive behaviors is or feels safer. It feels safer because your brain likes what it knows. Your brain chooses the pain that it knows above the comfort that it doesn't. Your brain would rather be struggling if it understands the struggle. And that is a big reason why a lot of people get stuck in their mental illness or in their mental health journey. We see this a lot with BPD. We see this a lot with depression. When you've built your identity around being the sad friend, the depressed friend, if you've built your identity around being the BPD friend, the impulsive friend, the crazy friend, whatever you've called yourself, now that we are learning to put ourselves first, now that we are learning skills, we have to completely let go of that identity. We have to completely let go of that identity. And that's terrifying. That is absolutely terrifying. If I'm not the depressed girl, who am I? What do I have? If I'm not the girl who have these crazy BPD stories, if I'm not the entertaining one in my friend group, who am I? What am I then? And you have to discover that. And that should be exciting. That's exciting. Who am I? What am I going to become? But for a lot of people, that's scary. That's very scary to let go of something that you found so much comfort in, even if it hurt you. That genuinely made me tear up. I need to work on who I am outside of being an angry gremlin. Same. I had to. I had this idea that I was just this angry person, which is why we have to let go of this idea of good and bad. Because I, spent so much time thinking, well, I'm just this bad person. And if I'm this bad person, then what's the point of learning to love myself? What's the point of learning to care about other people? I'm bad, so bad things happen to me. So I'm just going to keep doing bad things. Okay, we have to let go of that identity. You are, even if you've done painful things to other people and yourself, you are worthy of helping and experiencing life and bringing pleasure instead of pain. We have to learn how our brain works. The skills, the DBT skills, they're just skills. Okay, what makes them work is how they work with us, how we can integrate them into our lives. Okay, for instance, a big thing with me that why DBT didn't work the first time, I have something called aphantasia. So I cannot make pictures in my mind. I can't, if you ask me to think about a red ball, I don't see a Red Bull. I know what a Red Bull is. I understand the concept of a Red Bull. I think in concepts. So a lot of the DBT, a lot of mindfulness practice is closing your eyes and picturing a floating river, or picturing a leaf on a river, or picturing a staircase and walking up a staircase. And I can't physically do that. I cannot do that. So those skills don't work for me. Okay, so I can read those skills. I can try and integrate those skills. They're not going to work for me. I can't do them. That is why it is so important to get to know you. What are you capable of? So instead of me having to picture anything, I have to do body-based mindfulness. I have to feel the things in my body. I have to contract my muscles. I have to body scan awareness through my environment, my body. I can't do the mentalization ones. And that is why it is so important. Learning the skills is just one thing. Okay, anyone can learn skills. You have to integrate them into your life. I never really want to go to sleep unless I'm super tired, because otherwise I'll just lay there thinking about things that make me feel bad. Any tips? Write down some things you'd like to think about. Write down little scripts that you would like to think about. Use that time differently. We have to remember that although our brains are these incredible, biological devices, it is a computer. It is a small, dumb computer. It can only run the software that you give it. So if you are constantly giving it, feeding it information about how bad you are and about you think that you're a bad person, or that, all of the bad things you've done, it wants to please you. It is your best friend. Your brain loves you. So it thinks that's what you want to think about. It's going to show you more of the things that you want to think about. So we have to change the script. You have to write down, have little topics that you want to think about. Tonight, I'm going to think about if I had to run a game show, what kind of game show would I make? Who would be my contestants? What would I do in that scenario? What would everyone win? Whatever. Have a list, okay? Don't wait for your brain to come up with these things. Sit down before going to bed right now after this live. Think about 5 different topics that you would like to think about instead when you go to bed. Your brain wants to please you. The science behind manifestation, your brain will do anything to validate your idea of what your life is. Woo-woo, magical side aside, if you think you're a bad person, your brain will find ways to validate that thought. There are so many things that happens to us on a day-to-day basis. If you think you're a bad person, your brain will only register, your brain will only allow you to see the things that validate that you're a bad person on a small scale. Driving to work and you hit a red light, but you get to work early, whatever. You won't think about the fact that you got to work 5 minutes early and you're so lucky and you didn't get into a car accident and you heard your favorite song on the radio. You would get to work and go, oh my God, I hit every red light on the way here. It always happens to me. I'm just so unlucky. I'm such an unlucky person because I always hit the red lights. Okay. That's all you'll think about then. I feel so much calmer since coming onto your live. I love that. I love that, and I appreciate you being here. I was joking. I know, Carmen. I know you were. I know. But you guys have to remember, our brains don't know the difference between joking and not joking. Okay, if there's one thing, the hardest thing I had to learn, probably other than radical acceptance, when you make unaliving jokes, your brain doesn't know the difference. And it's a big reason why a lot of us have connected the idea of unaliving ourselves to our fear response. That is a big reason why a lot of us have those thoughts. When small things happen, we immediately go to the idea that, well, I could just unalive myself. And it's because we make those jokes. And it's almost directly correlated to the fact that we make unaliving jokes on a day-to-day basis. Your brain doesn't know the difference. Your brain doesn't know the difference between what you think and what is currently happening in your reality. That is why if you think about someone cheating on you, if you think about your partner cheating on you, you'll get sad. You'll probably start getting heart palpitations. You'll probably start getting clammy hands. If you think hard enough about jumping out of a plane or like skydiving or standing in front of an audience, you'll probably start producing cortisol. Your blood pressure will rise because whatever you're thinking of, anything you're thinking of, your brain thinks is currently happening. And the opposite is also true. If you think about how awesome you are, if you think about how good your life's going to turn out, if you think about all of the cool things that could possibly happen in your life, your brain doesn't know the difference. It thinks it's currently happening, so it'll produce the same chemicals, the same hormones. Tips on how to practice radical acceptance. It is a few-step process, okay? So there isn't just a specific tip, but the very first step to practicing radical acceptance is noticing how often you judge people and yourself. Okay, that's the very first step of radical acceptance, is simply bringing awareness to how often you are not radically accepting a situation. Okay, when we judge something, both positive and negative, people always think judgment means negative. It doesn't mean negative. It means positive or negative. The more we judge, the more we are not accepting. Because you can not like someone, but judging means you hate that person, or you can't stand that person, or that person is awful, they shouldn't, or whatever it is. So that's the first step. The second step to radical acceptance is then catching yourself when you start judging and then talking to yourself through that judgment. Oh my gosh, that person's outfit is so stupid, they shouldn't be wearing that. That's a thought. Why shouldn't they be wearing that outfit? What about that outfit is wrong? It's too loud and people are looking at them. Okay, so people shouldn't look at other people? Why should people not look at other people? Well, I don't like when people look at me. Okay, all right, so it's not anything to do with that person. Why don't you like when people look at you? Well, when people look at me, they judge me. Oh, so the very thing that you are currently doing is the thing that you are scared of other people are doing. Okay, so what happens if we stop doing that thing? What happens to the other people? Do they stop doing it? What about practicing radical acceptance when it comes to change, people leaving? Understanding that people do leave. Everyone is going to leave, Alina. Everyone's going to leave. That's how life works. Life isn't about things staying the same. And so because everyone is going to leave, really allowing yourself to be present in the moments that you have with the people in your life. With DBT, we have to understand that it is forever. Okay? I am still learning. I am still finding myself in situations that I've never been before, where I would respond in a way that is probably not beneficial to me. Please do not look at me and think that I am done, that I have it all figured out. If you see any practitioner, if you see anyone talking about mental health and they have it all figured out, they have the answer, they don't. And you will never have the answer. And that's part of the journey. And that's the point. Life is so exciting because we keep learning about ourselves. Life is so exciting because we keep finding ourselves in new environments where we can learn new things. When we go see practitioners, it is so important that we understand that we're going to go and see a human being. They are not perfect robots. They don't have all of the information in the world. They will interact with you and they will see you and they will help you through their life filter. They have learned that calling someone strong or being called strong is helpful to them, or they feel helped by that. They will use that on you. They want to help you in whatever way they believe. We have to be able to sit with that. We have to be able to understand that our practitioner is not an all-knowing being. They are still human and they are still going to mess up. Same thing with the people I work with. There has to be an open door. If I say something, because I will say something or do something that annoys you, I will. I'm a human being. I'm going to get it wrong. I need you to be able to tell me that. I need people to be able to share that with their practitioner and allow their practitioner to work through that with them. What happens when we all become therapists? How good? How good would that be? We need more practitioners with lived experience. Please, if you have complex mental health and you find yourself in a position to talk about your lived experience, to help others, you don't have to become a psychologist. Studying psychology is really difficult and sometimes very unhelpful. But, becoming a peer support worker, working in your community, helping others through giving them permission to be themselves. We need that. We need more practitioners who are not working out of a textbook. Autism is ruining my life. I wish my brain worked like everyone else's. So fair. Such a fair thought to have. But I promise you, the day that you start accepting that your brain is different, the day that you start working with your brain, it will open up so many doors. Doesn't mean it's easy. Doesn't mean it's an overnight change. But your brain is different. There's nothing you can do about that. There's nothing you can do that's going to change that. So you can spend the rest of forever wishing you were someone else, wishing you could do things, or you can start from today and ask yourself, sit with yourself, what do I like? What don't I like? What can I eliminate from my life? What can I make easier for myself? Where are my strengths? Because even with autism, I promise you, you are good at something, and you need to find what that is. It doesn't have to be good on a capitalist level. You don't have to sell it. You don't have to monetize it. But how can you make your life fun? I was meant to be a speech therapist, and I have to stop now and have no idea what I'm going to work in now. That's so exciting. That's so exciting. You can do anything. You can do anything. But I completely understand that idea, especially if you don't have what we refer to as a lot of identity pillars. Okay, identity pillars is something that we have to develop. If your one and only identity pillar is your job, and that job gets taken away, because it's so easy for our jobs to get taken away, yeah, it's going to feel like you have nothing, because you based your whole identity on that one thing. But you are not your job. If I stop being a therapist, I don't stop existing. I'm still a human being. I'm still a daughter and a sister and an artist and an actress and a traveler and someone who cooks and someone who enjoys the color purple. I'm still all of those things. Just because I'm not a therapist doesn't take that away, doesn't take any of the other things away. And then I can conduct a new identity pillar. I can become a lawyer, I can start studying law tomorrow if I really wanted. And so can you if that's what you really want. Try things, research things, learn things, see what brings you joy, what brings you, not even joy, what brings you energy. Okay, what can you research for hours? What can you talk about for hours? If I was to ask you right now to think of a topic to talk about, what could you talk about? Why does that interest you? Why does that make you feel alive? I bite my nails or pick at the skin on my lips due to my ADHD. Is there a way to stop this habit? Feels. We need to understand that any kind of stimming behavior, so stimming at its origin is a self-soothing behavior. It means your body is feeling anxious. There's something that's causing your body to respond, and you might not fully be triggered, you might not fully be in fight or flight, but you are well on your way to going into fight or flight or freeze or fawn. What I have discovered, you have to sit down with yourself and ask yourself what is triggering your stimming behaviors. That doesn't mean that we can necessarily stop our stimming behaviors, but we should try and find a different behavior that we can replace it with. That's the word, replacing our stimming behaviors. Or we need to minimize what causes that specific stimming behavior. So for me, my most destructive one is my lips. So I will pull at my lips until they bleed. I will pull until they look so gross. But what I have personally discovered, that specific stim comes from a lack of movement. So if I haven't gone for a walk, if I have been sitting too long, if I have not gone to the gym, if I have not moved my body in some way, that is the stim that I will go back to. So we have different stims for different reasons, but ultimately you are trying to calm yourself down. It's a self-soothing behavior. How do I start living for myself instead of others? I understand that I need to develop a sense of self, but how do I find motivation to develop a sense of self? Because I myself isn't good enough motivated to do it. But if I use something exterior as motivation, then that defeats the purpose. Start really small. You don't have to jump straight into loving yourself, okay? That gap is huge. If we go from hating ourselves, coming from trauma, and then someone tells you to just love yourself, that is a huge gap to jump. And so when you fail, because you will, you'll feel even worse about yourself. Oh, okay, so I can't even love myself. Great. We can't go from hating ourselves to loving ourselves. We have to go from hating ourselves to not hating ourselves, to just having a neutral interest. Okay, I have to go from hating myself to seeing myself as a person, to seeing myself as a person with flaws. And I don't have to like myself, I don't have to love myself, but I do have to see myself as a person with flaws, a person who makes mistakes, a person who's going to make mistakes. And you get to give yourself a tiny bit of empathy. You're allowed to be empathetic towards yourself. Okay, that's the first step. Just don't hate yourself. That's it. That's as far as we have to go. Going from not hating yourself to being interested in yourself. I want you guys to look up. It's called the Valued Living Questionnaire. And then what I want you to do is think about, in a perfect world, if we had unlimited money, if we had unlimited funds, where would you place your values? Where are your values? Do you value family? Do you value career? Do you value expression? Do you value community? Do you value self-care? Do you value fun and recreation? Do you value spirituality? What do you value? What would you put your value in? And then I want you to redo the Valued Living Questionnaire. And I want you to see where you are currently placing your values. Okay, right now, in this moment, how much effort am I putting into career? How much effort am I putting into self-care? How much effort am I putting into community, relationships, spirituality, recreation, whatever? And then see the differentiation. See how much effort you're putting into stuff you don't actually even care about. And then make small changes. In the space I'm in now, I really hope I can see the other side and help someone someday. You will. I want you guys to remember that if you are in this live, if you are currently listening to these words, if you are currently wanting to make a change, you are already on your way. You do not have to be here. You could be doing anything else right now. I promise you that. You have that option, you have that choice, and you're choosing this. And I want you guys to remember that your choices, that counts. Our behaviors, for sure, your brain has created some behaviors, and some of them, most of them, are unhelpful. It's trying to keep you safe. Your choices, you choosing to be here, you choosing to make a different behavioral choice when you would have chosen something else before, that's it. That's what we're doing here. That's it. That's all we're doing here. And you should be so proud of yourself for that.